polite, humble with yourself.
This is mine.
When you're a manager, you have to realize you're not going to be like, just get used to
It's
it.
fine, everybody pays. I know, I did. So much acceptance. And be quite on me.
Jaya Hare Hare, Hare Rama, So we'll just say on the chime briefly, then we'll get to chapter, to verse number 8. Makyanatamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're going to go to verse number 8. Before we get to this verse, just one thing I think could be good to just touch upon. What we tend to find, and you can see this is also something that you're experiencing, that whenever you hear about a particular topic, it makes you conscious of that aspect of Krishna consciousness. So what we've been hearing, as we've been hearing about the subtle aspects, the natas, gossip, etc., the effect of this is we become more sensitive to these enemies to our bhakti. And this is the whole purpose of this kind of reading. Because if I'm not sensitive, these things just pass by. I'm not necessarily aware that they're an issue. I don't even necessarily pick them up. But when I read about them, and we elaborate on a particular topic, then it makes us, it attunes us to that particular danger. That particular understanding that this is something to be careful of, this is something that can interfere with the very devotion that I'm trying to generate. Okay. So in that spirit, as we go into this next verse, just really think about that the scriptures are meant to bring sensitivity. They're meant to bring an awareness. And that awareness helps us to understand the things which we want to do more of, both in quality and quantity, and it also keeps us alert to those things which can steal our bhakti, those things which otherwise can creep into our life space. One thing is that they creep into the life space of an individual devotee. That's one thing. Worse is when they become acculturated. It becomes a culture. So that's all by default we're exposed to this kind of thinking. Oh, it's about prestige. Or this kind of thinking, don't worry about the anatas, let them go. Or this kind of thinking, it's okay to gossip. It has no effect. One of the things we want to encourage all of you to do is try to think how you would take some of this away from the retreat. The best practice is to focus on just one thing. Often people hear so many things. It's not expected that everything will change overnight. It's unrealistic. But there'll be something, obviously throughout the entire retreat, Maharaja will also speak more tomorrow. There'll be something that you feel particularly resonates for you. And what we encourage all of you to do, tune into that and start practicing it before you leave the environment. The reason why many people don't get the same benefit from the retreats is because they practice something in the retreat space and then they go home and they're in a complete different space and they lose the practice. What we want to do is hit the ground running. So if, for example, it is one person takes away the need to glorify devotees more, start glorifying the devotees in this space. So make it a habit that you're already developing before you leave. And then you'll carry the momentum of that practice back with you, back into your day-to-day life. Okay, so that said, we will chant verse 8 together. Yata dustapam me davayati sapatyapi satasyapi kripaya.
Yata dustapam me davayati satasyapi kripaya.
Yata mayam premamritam apidadat yujwalam asu.
Yata mayam premamritam apidadat yujwalam asu.
Yata shrikandava bhajana vidyaye prerayati mam.
Yata shrikandava bhajana vidyaye prerayati mam.
Tatangoste katpa giridaram ihatvam bhajamana.
Tatangoste katpa giridaram ihatvam bhajamana.
Okay, so please repeat after me. Shatasyapi. Even though I am a cheater. Yata. So that. Kripaya. By His mercy. Dustatvam me. My inherent wickedness. Davayati. Is driven away. Yata. So that. Ujvalam. The glowing. Primamritam. Nectar of prema. Api. Is also. Dadati. Bestowed completely. Mayam. On me. Yata. So that. Aso. These. Shri Gandhava Bhajana Vidaye. Injunctions regarding worship of Shri Gandhavika. Prerayati. Are inspired. Mam. In my heart. Vita. For that purpose. Manaha. O mind. Takva. With pleading words. Tvam bhaja. You should worship. Giridaram. Shri Giridhari. The lifter of Govardhana hill. Iha. Here. Go stay in the land of cows, Vrindavan. Okay, so Raghunath Das Goswami states as follows: even though I'm a cheater, the Lord's mercy can drive away my inherent wicked nature. Give me the glowing nectar of divine love and inspire my heart with the process to worship Sri Gandharvika. Therefore, O mind, with pleading words, you should worship Sri Giridhari here in Vrindavan. So, I think this is a very important verse for a number of reasons. In the previous verses we've been talking about some of these anatas or obstacles. It is very easy in the life of a devotee to think sometimes that there's no hope. In fact, the more that we read, the more that devotees read, sometimes we're like, whoa, when we first came it was just like trying to be happy. And it seemed like it was a very easy prescription. And then we read all of these different things. But they're meant to be taken in a particular mood. Actually, one of the benefits of this kind of reading is to understand the nature of the enemies and the strength of the enemies, which all constitute Maya, material energy. But we're not trying to become free of Maya by our own strength. Even before this verse, when I was thinking that if we're not careful, what happens is we read about these things and devotees can lose hope. I've got to give up this, I've got to give up that, this is subtle, this has to be removed before I can achieve love of God. And what is the hope? But this verse is about the hope. If it's about our own strength, then one may feel hopeless. There's too many things to overcome. But this verse is extremely important. And this is one of the crown jewels of the principles of Krishna consciousness. We don't go back by our own strength. Every one of us, we have an intimate set of beliefs within our minds. And those beliefs are also projected onto Krishna consciousness. If I grew up in an environment where I had to struggle for myself, I may come to Krishna consciousness and without meaning to, I may project that same mentality onto the practice of devotion. And I'm not struggling with the teaching as it is. I'm struggling with my projection onto the teaching. So this is to emphasize that, and just look at the wording. Right? So what is Raghunath Das Goswami stating? He begins by saying, even though I'm a cheater, the previous verses were talking about this. Kaitava, cheating tendency. It's interesting, I gave class at ISKCON London. Sometimes we even think, well, is this all possible? Like, how is this going to happen? And even some materialists will think, how do we know there's a God? What proof is there? But if you look at it very clearly, you'll see that what often happens is people will hold the spiritual paradigm to a completely different standard to the standard that they hold the material world. To give an example, you get one seed. That seed, if it's properly nourished, it becomes an entire tree which can also generate more seeds and fruit. You look at that, that's actually inconceivable. When you understand that, but we accept it. It's inconceivable, and you go across the entire planet, everyone will say, yes, of course, it makes complete sense. But it's inconceivable. How that actually works, people couldn't really explain. They can describe that there's things going on in the seed. Why do those things go on in the seed? No explanation. Ultimately, it's happening for one reason. It's happening because of the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if we look with that proper vision, if we look without the material conditioning, we see that miracles are the norm actually. Everything about nature is itself a miracle arrangement. So then, understanding that proper context that we accept every day, then that same Supreme Being who's able to make this incredible arrangement, it's nothing for him to make other arrangements which are just as incredible, if not more incredible. So we have to see things in their proper context. And that's the danger of the material world, cheating. So I'll hold the spiritual to one standard, even though, and I'll say this is unbelievable, but I believe things which are amazing and unusual that happen every single day of my life in the material world. Another example, just how a baby is born. It's inconceivable. How that whole process happens? But we accept it every single day. So this kaitava, this cheating, it's so pervasive that it becomes normal. It becomes normal to think that something is unbelievable, even though actually we accept so many unbelievable things. So Raghunath Das Goswami starts here. Even though I'm a cheater, he says the Lord's mercy can drive away my inherent wicked nature. So there's actually a transference of faith. This Sanskrit word is important. Shraddha. The prefix comes from the Sanskrit word rid, which means heart. And then the suffix da, place of shelter. So Shraddha, the place where the heart finds shelter. That's actually what it means. So every single one of us, our hearts are taking shelter of something. Most people are not conscious of where the heart is taking shelter. Our job is to bring that heart to the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is what it means to have faith. It doesn't actually matter what our status is. If we sincerely try our best, that all-compassionate Lord, He can do anything. And we all know the famous story, right? Those are the Brahmana and the cobbler. So, the Brahmana, he meets Narada Muni. He's asking him, when you go to see the Lord, please tell him of me, etc. The cobbler, very simple servant. When Narada Muni sees the Lord actually tells, because the Brahmana's asking, when will I come back? That was the cobbler also asked. And so, when Narada Muni approaches the Lord says, tell the Brahmana that he won't come back for many lifetimes. And tell the cobbler he'll come back very soon. And he says, if they ask what I was doing, tell them I was doing what? I was threading it, and then through that, I had a needle. Inconceivable. Inconceivable. So Narada Muni comes and tells the cobbler, and he tells the Brahmana. So when he tells the cobbler, the cobbler completely accepted it because he's not kaitava. He's very simple-hearted. And he understands, he has a proper understanding of the Lord. He can do anything. Of course he can do anything. Not only can he do anything, he can deliver anyone. We're trying to follow it properly, but he is not bound by the process. And this is also the mood here. Krishna's mercy is greater than his law. And therefore one should always have that hope in Krishna consciousness. Krishna's mercy is greater than his law. Prabhupada speaks about 3 ways to perfection, Nitya Siddha. So someone like Srila Prabhupada, he can come into the material world, go out, he's not bound by the material energy, as Maharaj said in the earlier class, Nitya Siddha. Then there are those who, by strictly following Sadhana Siddha, they move through all those stages to become perfected. And then the third group are Kripa Siddha. Kripa means mercy. So Kripa Siddha is one who sincerely tries to move forward. And that mercy of the Lord, and especially the mercy of the Lord's devotees, brings that person back home, back to Godhead. So that mood is always there, this mood of hope. Not that my faith is in my own strength. It's not Manusya Shakti. It's not the material strength. It's the Daivi Shakti. There's let me see if I can find it for you. There's a quote, and it's from the pastime in the Bhagavatam, Bali Maharaj. And so Bali Maharaj, he's just absolutely defeating, the demigods. And there's a verse. And in the verse, the point is being made that Bali Maharaj, his potency has come because he served the Brahmana descendants of Bhrigu Muni. And being pleased with him, they endowed him with this incredible potency. And then in the purport to that verse, Prabhupada makes the point that the mercy of the spiritual master is more important, is more significant for one's advancement than one's own endeavour. You can find it, I can find the quote maybe later on. But it's actually, Prabhupada states that directly. There's a seminar on this topic as well, so the power of blessings. And so the point that's actually really coming through here is that where is our Shraddha? Where does the heart take shelter? And as Maharaj touched upon this earlier, the point is that we have to become dependent actually. Dependent doesn't mean lazy. In the material world, dependence means, well, I'm dependent, I'm not going to do anything, and you should just make it happen for me. Dependent doesn't mean lazy. Dependent is an attitude, it's an understanding that even I make an endeavour, where is my energy coming from? If you're in a situation where you can't get any food, or any encouragement, you can lose energy. That food and encouragement comes from somewhere else, but ultimately it's coming from Krishna. So, in any endeavour, ultimately we're dependent on Krishna, whether you're a materialist or a spiritualist. It doesn't actually matter. Everyone's dependent on Krishna. Some people are aware of the dependence, and we honour that dependence, and it's like the dependence of a child on their parents. If the parents are good and you depend on them, everything is taken care of. Everything. You receive all nourishment, all care, all protection. If we try to depend on our own strength, then it's going to be problematic. Bhagavad Gita says, Devyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mamevaye prapadyante mayam etam tarantate. Krishna says this divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is very difficult to overcome. Duratyaya. He says, but those who what? Prapadyante, those who surrender, as we said before, that the Sarup Lakshanam of the devotees, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is a surrender. But those who prapadyante, those who surrender unto me, mayam etam tarantite, they can overcome this difficult material energy very easily. And you'll see reverberations of this throughout Krishna's teachings. Mamavamso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashishtan indriyani prakritishtani kashati. In the purport to that verse, Prabhupada says kashati means struggling very hard. So living entities, Krishna says, they're mama eva amsa, part and parcel of me, he says. But they're struggling with what? Mana. So here, mana shiksha. Mana means? Mana means what? Yeah, mind. Mana, shishtani, indriyani. Indriyani means the senses. Sashtani means six. They're struggling very hard with the mind and the senses. The mind is considered to be the sixth sense. Relating it back to this entire theme. Struggling very hard with the mind and the senses. So if we take shelter of Krishna, if we rely on him, then in the same mood as this particular verse, we know that there is always hope. And actually again emphasizing that the way that we receive the Lord's mercy, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes this point in the Madhura Kadambini. Krishna gives his mercy to his devotees to distribute on his behalf. And the partiality of the devotees is not to be considered a fault. So Krishna has given that grace to his devotees, and if we interact with them properly, we are able to receive that grace. And it's Krishna's grace that they distribute. Sometimes you see devotees go on Sankirtan, on Harinam. Whenever you're doing that, you're distributing Krishna's mercy. In fact, it's divine intervention. You're intervening in the karma of that particular living entity's life, or at least offering them an opportunity to move beyond it. So, the Lord's mercy can drive away my inherent wicked nature, give me the glowing nectar of divine love, and inspire my heart with the process to worship Sri Gandharvika. Inspire my heart with the process to worship. we need to be inspired. We need to be inspired in our spiritual life. Inspiration is a kind of strength. It builds a momentum. And what we cannot do is expect it to happen automatically, because we are in Maya's camp. So the default patterns of this material world are kind of insane, to be honest with you. People thinking that they're the body is an insanity. People thinking that you're born and you're just going to be here for a few years and then die, and it's just all, and this entire creation is just by accident. It's a form of insanity. No one who's objective would come to that conclusion. So we have to really understand we need inspiration. And because we're here because we wanted to try to enjoy separately from Krishna. So this name Radharani, Gandharvika. Radharani, she is the guardian of devotion. No one can come to Krishna unless she gives permission. There was a class that Prabhupada gave on Radhastami in Berry Place in London. And he refers to Radharani, he calls her Jagannatha. He said we should get the mercy of our mother Radharani. And it's so interesting, on the one side, unless someone is really sincere, she will not bring them to Krishna, because she doesn't want to give anything below quality to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this class, though, Prabhupada said, she's very merciful. Radharani is very merciful. If you receive her mercy, she'll turn to Krishna and say, Krishna, here is your devotee. They are better than me. They're better than me. And it's the beauty of the spiritual world, which is the opposite of this world. Here, when people have something, they tend to get proud. There, the more they have, the more humble they are. So it's a completely different dynamic. It's a very beautiful dynamic. The nature of devotion is that the more someone has devotion, the more they feel that they don't have any devotion to Krishna. Bhakti Charamaj told me that once. I can't remember where we were. He said, the more you make advancement, the more you'll feel that you have no advancement. That's what he actually said. It's just the sweet nature of devotion. Someone is coming closer and closer to the Lord, therefore they feel themselves insignificant. And at the same time, they feel themselves very inspired because of how, I sit here, because of the mercy of the Lord. They feel His compassion actually. They feel the love of this particular person. So there's no question of feeling unenthusiastic or lacking, because the Lord can achieve everything. And that's really the mood that is expressed here. The Lord can give me the glowing nectar of divine love and inspire my heart with the process to worship Sri Gandharvika. Therefore, O mind, with pleading words, you should worship Sri Giridhari here in Govardhan. So again, the theme, Braj Bhakti. As we said previously, Prabhupada has already put the elements of Braj Bhakti into our program. It's always there. Sometimes it's not recognized for what it is, but it's always there. The day you came into the temple, you heard Jai Radha Madhava, Radha and Madhava in Vrindavan. Right? It mentions the places of Vrindavan, special places. And we sing that every single class. Prabhupada has given that. He's brought this, not just prema, Braj prema. He's brought that forward, and He's given us the means and the process by which we can attain it as well. Again, the mood is here. And so that humility, even though I'm a cheater, it can be painful in spiritual life sometimes to see what's in the heart. It can be painful sometimes to consider there's so many things that can come up. But we have to balance that with the understanding that actually Krishna already knew that was there anyway. So it's not something, maybe a surprise for us, it's not a surprise for him. And he still accepts us. And this is also how we're meant to be as devotees. In Gita Nagari there is this quote on the wall, and it talks about friendship. It says a friend is someone who understands the journey that you've been on, so understands where you've come from, accepts you as you are, and yet still lovingly invites you to grow. So it's a good move for the devotees. So we acknowledge we've all been on a journey, actually a journey of many, many lifetimes. And we've come into Krishna consciousness, or maybe even some of us are born in the movement at a certain point. So we have a journey, we also are in a particular point, but it doesn't stop there. The other part is that loving invitation to grow. And the best way to give the loving invitation to grow is by being the example that we expect to see in other people. We want to be that example. Because also what happens is if people see the fruit of devotion, it inspires them to move in that same direction as well. So example is much more powerful than just speech. How we serve the devotees, how we look after the devotees, how we care for the devotees. There was someone, I think it was Sajjananda Maharaj, met some congregation member who'd been coming as part of the congregation for a long time, but always kept at a bit of a distance. And he spoke to him, and Maharaj asked him, why have you never gotten more involved? And he told him the truth. He said, because I see how you treat the people who are more involved and how you treat the people who are new, and therefore I decided to stay on the outskirts. And she told him that, which is not good. Prabhupada said if someone leaves, it's 50% their fault and 50% our fault. So we have to always consider, how am I showing up? Not in a kind of negative way, but in a way of thinking, how can I show up in a better way to really be that example? Don't think that someone else should do it. Don't think that it's someone else's job. The devotees they're not caring. That's the wrong question. The question is, am I caring? The devotees don't facilitate other people. Wrong question. Do I facilitate other people? It's always, we have to understand, it really starts with us. Otherwise what will happen is institutions can attract people who have codependency. Codependency means they want someone to do everything for them. I remember hearing about this once. There was even some people who are criminals, and they've been in prison for a long time, and they're so used to just being in prison and having everything done for them. So when their sentence finishes and they leave, what happens? They go to a shop, smash the window, and stand there waiting for the police. When the police comes, and they just take them back to prison, and that's where they wanted to go, because they've become unable to function properly. So we don't want to be like that as a devotee. We want to carry that particular mood. So we know from the previous verse that by the association of sadhus, there's a gradual transfusion. Spiritual energy comes to us. And by that gradual transfusion, this wickedness which is being spoken about here is being driven away. Right? The Lord's mercy can drive away my inherent wickedness. So, we know that the deceit or pretense are the wickedness of the conditioned soul. It's also good to understand that the pure soul is by nature very simple. And so sometimes devotees, followers of Prabhupada, especially his servants, they would talk about how they watched Prabhupada in different situations. And Prabhupada was just always very clear, simple, no pretensions, very genuine in his interactions with others. So that is an example for us. The pure devotee is thoroughly honest. At the same time, they're also very, very sharp when it comes to Krishna, looking after Krishna's interests. So Prabhupada was also like that. He was very aware of what he was dealing with and trying to institute Krishna consciousness in a world full of conditioned living entities, and how to navigate that situation to establish the movement. And this movement, by the way, even Prabhupada's books, is here for the long term. Sometimes people have an issue with Prabhupada's books because they feel, oh, it's a bit too heavy, it's a bit too dense. But it's actually, that's deliberate. That's deliberate. It's just like this. If you want to build a building and you want it to last a long time, you use something very, very dense. You use dense material. Because you need a material which is so strong that over the course of a long period of time, it will still stand. So Prabhupada's books, they're not necessarily written just for this one period. He's conscious. They're consciously written for the next 10,000 years. And that's why it's written in a certain way. And that's why there's some things that people are very comfortable with, and there's some things that I think, oh, will people be able to accept this at this time? And Prabhupada's consideration is, those things that they may or may not accept are fleeting, but we've got to write something that's going to last a particular period of time to give the entire humanity for 10,000 years an opportunity to come back home, back to Godhead. So again, it's about seeing things in that particular context. That's why these things are written a certain way. Okay, so this whole point about this deceitfulness, it comes because of taking shelter of ignorance and illusion. Yeah? We said Shraddha is where the heart finds shelter. If the heart takes shelter of ignorance and illusion, what happens? We become deceitful, falsely proud, obsessed by a desire for honor, worship, adoration, prestige. We become hypocritical, and we become consumed by dishonest activities. Interestingly enough, in the Bhajana Darpanam, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that such individuals, they'll seek distance from everything related to Krishna. That's a really interesting point. If our desires become so strong, so material, we'll feel a bit awkward being around the devotees. You even see that sometimes, right? If a devotee is really, really serious, and you're kind of like, oh, you know what, I'm around this person, because it kind of feels like they're reminding me of all the things that I'm not doing, like that. So it's kind of like, you need to keep a bit of a distance to that one, okay, like that. So there's a resonance like that. Yeah. If we are doing things in a devotional way, we can feel very comfortable in some ways. But of course the point is we should overcome that. No matter where we are, we should also try to take association, even if it sometimes feels awkward, because ultimately it will purify us. The other point is that the other point that Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes in his commentary to this verse, he makes the point that when we realize our true position in relation to Krishna as his servant, we feel humble. And he says we get the intelligence to respect others according to their position. So Krishna says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upiyanti te. Those who serve me with devotion, I give them the knowledge or the intelligence by which they can come to me. That intelligence that we're receiving is a result of this devotional practice. So, whether it's through the books, whether it's through hearing, the Lord can also give that intelligence from within the heart. But you get something through the practice and through the sincere endeavor, and that will illuminate our ability to navigate the association of devotees properly, to respect the devotees properly, and to also interact with them in such a way that we can receive the nectar from that association, and where necessary we can uplift. Right? So we don't become cynical or even bitter. Because, see, it's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it talks about the heart being in different kinds of conditions. In devotional service, the heart is our instrument. So, we have to interact in such a way that we don't become negative in the association of devotees. It's very, very important. It requires sometimes some expertise, right? Knowing how to deal, being especially forgiving actually. It's especially important to cultivate a forgiving mentality. It's the statement by Prabhupada that the material world is full of embarrassing and irritating situations. He said, unless one is inclined to be very much forgiving, one's consciousness will be soiled with a vindictive mentality that ruins one's spiritual consciousness. Yeah. So it's something that we cultivate, we practice, we develop. Not at the point that it's necessary, we cultivate it even before it's necessary. Right? And that way we release it from the heart. Forgiveness, there's one explanation that forgiveness is like, not forgiving, sorry. It's like someone's done something to you and you're holding on to some hot coals, waiting to throw it at that person. But all the while that you're holding it, who are you burning? Burning yourself. Yeah. And by the way, that's not to make light of the fact that sometimes people go through bad experiences. It's not to, actually, a lot of forgiveness is first acknowledging that was rough. Yeah? Because when we start by acknowledging what's really happened, it's invoking the mode of goodness. Okay, this is a reality of what's happened. Now I'm going to work with that so I can let it go, so I can move on. Like that. So, some thoughts on that. Let me just see if there's anything else we need to share. And then maybe we'll open up for questions. Okay. So, in those verses 4 to 7, we've been exposed to the different pollutions of consciousness. Okay, whether it's pride, whether it's the 6 enemies of the mind, so lust, envy, anger, greed, etc. Whether it's pratishta, the desire for fame, honor, etc. These are all pollutions of the consciousness. And we've been given 2 kinds of solution. Number 1, utter humility. That's one point. The second is the process of bhakti in general, and within the process of bhakti in general, the importance of the association of devotees, especially pure devotees. And we also discussed in the previous class how that Ladini Shakti, the rays of the Ladini Shakti can emanate from their heart and also accumulate within our own heart. And in the previous class we therefore discussed that accessing that mercy, that the rays of that Ladini Shakti can come through their remnants, at the dust of their lotus feet, but also through their Vani, through their instructions. Because those elements, they carry that particular potency, especially as a way of us connecting to them. In this verse also, we can understand that humility protects our bhakti from becoming corrupted. See, what happens is people come to Krishna consciousness and actually, generally they're very sincere. You'll find rarely someone comes in with a very clear, gross, ulterior motive. But it's a question of association. If I'm around devotees who have a very, let's say, a more mixed purpose, then through influence, through this Lokika Shraddha, like the favour of being part of the crowd, I will be steered in that particular direction. There's a quote from Hiranyakashipu that's mentioned in one of the commentaries here, and it's really emphasizing that point that the association really has a big impact. What does that mean again? This idea of what's implied by that? What's implied by that is wherever you want to end up in spiritual life, you should associate with devotees who are at that status, or orienting themselves in that way. Again, the idea here is that we don't take our spiritual life for granted, we don't drift. It's just like if someone wants to become a successful business person, you don't hang out and try to do business or learn from the people who are broke and bankrupt and their businesses have all failed. You're looking for successful business people. The more successful they are and the more astute you are, the more they give you all the tips and tricks. Right? You can do this, you can go like that. When the job that I do, when I started this job, because it's training, I noticed that I had a colleague, and because we're training the managers and we're training them in a particular way, sometimes Because they kind of, sometimes they're a bit alpha. They want to kind of, I've got my own opinion. So you'll say something and they just want to push back. Or they just want to give a different opinion. So I learned this trick, and I saw my colleague do this. So when someone would push back and give a different opinion, he would then just throw it out to the audience and say, who has a different view? And so he just use that person against some other person in the audience and say he's clean. So someone's disagreed with him. Does anyone have a different perspective? And they would attack that person. And then it just clears the whole thing up. So the idea is that when we engage in devotional service, you'll see there's devotees who have so many things that they've learned. And because devotional service is like a vast ocean, there are so many amazing things that we can learn from the other devotees. I mean, this year I know that Maharaja's coming. We have this 20-year anniversary for the passing away of Bhakti Maharaj in Gitanagari. And one of the things that Bhakti Maharaj wanted is that he wanted these global summits. And the idea of the global summit is that devotees will come together and they share what they've been doing. Right? What pioneering projects have we been doing? What are the lessons learned? Right? What strategies have been successful? What strategies have been unsuccessful? Right? How are we doing in our spiritual practice? What are you finding is working for you? What can you share? And so I was thinking that it's such a powerful thing, because in the association of devotees, there's so much to gain by the devotee association. So what's your technique for reading? Oh, well, I found this really, really works for me. How do you manage that, given that you've got a full-time job and you've got all these other things? Yeah, I had that struggle as well. But what I tried to do was this, and I found that really worked. So it's also an encouragement. It's really, if you want to take advantage of it, you will be surprised how much Krishna can show us and teach us and help us if we just reach out to the devotees and ask them, speak to them. So what do you do in this particular area? Like, this is what I'm doing. What's working for you? Right? How do you look after yourself? I know you're a personal servant. You've got an intense schedule. What works for you? And you keep asking, and you'll find that all kinds of gems, all kinds of special mercy, all kinds of insights are there in the environment that we can take advantage of. And what it does is it also helps us to understand how much Krishna is showing his love for us through the devotees. I was telling someone after the class we gave earlier, one devotee here was asking about this point, that you do service and you're not sure if it's appreciated or even needed. And when I was speaking to them, I had that realization that actually this is really important. You should understand that when you do service, you may or may not get appreciation in the people, with the devotees that you're doing that service with. But you shouldn't think that when you get appreciation somewhere else, that it's not the same Krishna. So you're doing service with one group, and Krishna may not actually inspire them to say anything to you, but he may give you that appreciation through another means, because he's watching. Yeah? So we often think it's got to come through this particular route. No, that's not the way Krishna does it necessarily. But you'll get it. And as Maharaj said also, it can even just come within the heart. You feel satisfied. I know I heard this point that it was one Prabhupada disciple who was actually making that point, that when he asked Prabhupada, how do you know that Krishna is pleased? Prabhupada would usually say, you know when the spiritual master is pleased. But then on this particular occasion, he said exactly what Maharaj said. He said, you know that Krishna is satisfied when you're satisfied. So there's also this internal marker that actually, I feel inspired, I feel good about devotional service. Again, it requires us to, we should find space in our life to introspect on how we're doing. Yeah? And the other thing I'll say is that from time to time, and this is really important, from time to time we need to do a reset. In fact, from time to time we have to rejoin the Hare Krishna movement. From time to time we have to rejoin, do a reset. And remember, why did I come here? All these practices, these festivals, these programs, why did I join? Did I join for some name, fame and position? Practically no one joins for that reason, because often, to be honest, they don't even know it's available. Yeah. There was someone said to David Rita Maharaj, they said, I don't believe in organised religion. He said, you think we're organised? That's amazing. You don't have to worry about it. So, it's like we have to remember why we came and have this kind of faith. It doesn't matter what we are, what we've done, what we've not done. If we sincerely try our best, the Lord Himself is ready to help every single devotee. Every single devotee. In fact, one of the types of sadhu ninda, offences to devotees, is to criticize devotees for things that they did before they came to Krishna consciousness. It's complete, as far as Krishna is concerned, it doesn't matter. You're here now. And actually, even the devotees is like very proper. We've done all kinds of crazy things in previous lives anyway. Yeah. But Krishna's, He's concerned that we come back home. That's His real concern. So this verse is really that emphasis. Krishna can give the nectar of divine love. Yeah? That's the point. He can give that. His pure devotees can give that. Prabhupada has given that path. Prabhupada, He's empowered His followers to continue on His mission. And Prabhupada is still here. We sometimes think Prabhupada has left. He's still here. He's not necessarily here physically, but He's here. There was a pastime, because these murtis, they were actually, Prabhupada had agreed to have these murtis made, and one to go down there and preach, and Prabhupada said, no way.
You didn't say.
You didn't
say no way.
Oh, you didn't say, Candramauli said this.
I can tell you this.
Oh, yeah, please.
Because I was privy to the person who was speaking. Happened about 15 years ago, Bhakti Maharaj's room in Mayapur. Was Bhavana. Bhavana was with Prabhupada. Prabhupada was always animated and talkative about what he wants done, or glorification of Krishna. He's like constantly in that mindset. But this time he was very silent. And he was getting a massage from Bhavananda. And Bhavananda describes that at one point he broke the silence. And this is the exact words. And Krishna said to me, you go to the material world and preach. And I said to Krishna, material world, horrible place. Horrible place. And Krishna said, no, you go, you write some books, and I'll protect you. So Krishna wanted me, came for me to come. And that's how it was described. Prabhupada knew he was an Indian citizen.
Yeah.
He knew everything about himself. It wasn't a big mystery. The only thing that was the difficulty is how to present it in a Western mind, within a Western environment. I thought I had to study that and work with people and learn how to, bring that into a mentality that had no idea who Krishna was generally and what was devotional service. That was his struggle. With us. Everything about Prabhupada's mission, he was clear about.
Material world, horrible.
The way it was described, it was like an emphasis on the word horrible. Well, I would go like this. For those in the spiritual world, they look at this place as As Prabhupada said, a place where you come, you pass urine and stool, that's all. He said this place is like a bathroom. You go in, you pass urine and stool, you don't stay in the bathroom, you get out.
It's perfect.
So who wants to go to the bathroom anyway? So many very, what we say, descriptive adjectives that describe this place. The fool's paradise. I was walking in Mexico, and there was the devotees there, and there was a big garbage dumpster where you throw garbage in. There was some writing on the outside in Spanish. So the devotees, Prabhupada asked the devotees, well, what does that say? And the devotee said, well, that's Prabhupada said, place your garbage here. Prabhupada said, yes, we should put the whole material world there. For a self-realized soul, he knows this place is an anomaly for the soul. It's just a place of prison, that's all. Unless we have some insight of who we are and what the spiritual world is like, we still try to make some comfortable arrangement. It's called, one devotee wrote to me a poem or an analogy. It's called, what was it called? It was about the Titanic. You remember the ship that left England was the invincible ship that could never sink. And the most important people in the world were taking that trip just to be as the first ones to honor that particular boat. That boat, to build it, 8 people lost their life just building that boat. It was immense. It was huge. And so there were people who were on the main deck, and there were people who were on the lower deck. So when that iceberg, when they hit that iceberg, the people on the lower deck, they were aware of what was happening, but the people on the upper deck were still partying and having a party. So the analogy was that some saw everything going down and the others were just still partying. So those who see things in reality, they react, and others, they become oblivious to the reality. And then soon the reality hits them in the form of all of their plans are thrown into the wind. Yeah, so if you listen to the acharyas, those who have realization of both places, you can understand what this place is meant for. But Krishna gives to the living entities some happiness in the form of whatever we need to live here. So that's Krishna's special arrangement. Otherwise, I mean, if there was no sun, there would be no life here. So where does the sun come from? It's called the eye of the Lord. The sun makes everything alive in the universe, not only this planet, the whole universe. So what is this planet? It's a dark, cold place, that's all. Very well. Any volunteers to come back?
So maybe...
Yeah, it sounds a little bit morbid for some people, but it's when you actually understand it in relationship to the reality, you understand. It's actually an understatement. Only madmen want to stay here. Only madmen want to adjust. What is it called? Changing seats on the Titanic. That was the poem. For the people on the top, it was like everything was okay, even though they were going down. But the people on the bottom, they understood everything. So if you change your seats when you're on the bottom and you want to go to the top, does that mean you're going to be able to survive? No. Changing seats in this material world means you prolong, not prolong, but you inoculate yourself against towards the reality. So your spiritual master wrote that book, Die Before Dying.
Yeah.
If you could speak a little bit about that, that would be interesting.
Yeah, so when Bhakti Maharaj was preparing to leave the world, he was sharing his reflections on the topic. And yeah, that statement's very, very significant. So it's really speaking to letting go of all the material designations and the material identities before we're forced to do that, actually. And it's a very reflective book. I don't know if Mahajan, if you wanted to say anything about that before times. I know that you also saw the Maharaj before you left.
Yeah. I mean, many things when he left for three months, 3 days, until he left his body. One thing that I was recalling now, that once we just took Bhakti Maharaj into a room, and I think it was him, Ranganath Maharaj, and myself. I think Guru Maharaj was there too. So Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami was looking at right into Ranganath Maharaj's eyes, and he said, "You and me, we know very well why Srila Prabhupada brought us here. So now we are being called up to another service. We have to leave." So many instances like that, like he was doing a service here, and now has to go with Prabhupada, whatever Prabhupada is, or he has to go and leave and do another service. That was one instance, and also I saw that the most touching part in my life that I mean, this is the heaviest thing that I have to pass through is. This is very intimate, but I know we all will tune the voice here. That he was crying once in my shoulder practically, because I was there and he was crying, and he asked us, to me, which I was, very well. I still am very neophyte devotee, but at that time I was very young and neophyte. He asked us, "You think I can make it?" And he was crying like anything. He didn't say I'm afraid. No. He said, "You think I'm," but he looks like afraid. In his deep humility, he was saying, "You think I can make it? I can make it to the spiritual world?" Was Brakeshwara Pandit coming in? He said, "Brakeshwara, are you there? Yes, please chant for me." And then was Brakeshwara Pandit, it was myself. He was looking at us and he said, "You think I can make it?" I said, "How you?" He asked his disciple, At one point, anyway, I can speak forever, but anyway, at one point he said, he was treating us like if he was treating people from the spiritual world. It's not a disciple anymore. It was this conception of discipleship and guruship was not there anymore. He was treating Radha Maharaj as he was treating me, or he was treating, anyone. Because his vision was completely just everyone is the same, It was like a Maharaj?
Yeah. That's pure vision.
Yeah, yes. At one point he said, "Don't bring me more CDs because we keep giving him CDs of ISKCON, festival here, festival there." He was watching movies at the end, the last 20, 25 days, movies about Krishna, something to remind Krishna. He was all the time trying, of course, remember Krishna. He was chanting and making many things. And at one time I brought a CD of some ISKCON festival. "I don't want to know anything about ISKCON, I don't want to know anything about guruship, I'm not your guru anymore. I'm out of here. Out of here! Out of here, I don't have anything to do with all that." Anyway, some intimate things later on we can share. Thank you for allowing me to do it. We gotta get out of here. It's the last thing we ever do. Prabhupada sitting in a hotel room one time, And he was in a very contemplative, somewhat pensive mood. And then he started to speak. There was a few devotees around. And Prabhupada said, I'm always praying not to fall into Maya. And he wasn't making some kind of example for us. He was actually feeling like that. I'm always praying not to fall into Maya. Shri Radha Govinda Madhava ki Krishna Balaram ki Shri Gaura Nitai ki. This is a great topic. Why don't you explore it even more?
I'm not sure the time we'll do the time. I'm looking at Hector nervously. Tomorrow? Okay. Today, tomorrow. So.
I'll give you one of my slots. You can take it.
Oh no, let's discuss it later. So what should we do? Well, let's wrap up. Okay. So what we'll do is, we will wrap up, and then tomorrow, Maharaj will continue us forward into verses 9, 10, and then 11.
And everything is sweet after this.
Yeah. She's good.
You see how it's done. First, it's how to get to the spiritual world.
Yes.
Then it's how to entangle us from the material world, and then after that entanglement is at least free, or we're free from the entanglement, what you can expect in the spiritual world. That's the last few verses.
It's something to look forward to.
This treatise by Maharaja is genius. The way he put it is. It's just bhakti, but it's full of tattva. It's so deep in tattva. If you study this one, you'll find there's unlimited amounts of information. I mean, I've been seeing a few devotees who are becoming really like stunned listening to these lectures, especially your lectures. They're thinking, wow, boy, I got a lot of work to do. Because I came across a few who are just that, like, whoa. So you really touch their hearts, and that's the idea of bringing out this message in a way that we can actually feel the need to move forward and make it a conscious endeavor to do it. And not just some philosophy we hear about, go home and nothing changes.
I think it's a real. First of all, thank you, Marge, for allowing us to come and share something and to learn ourselves. But there's so, as you were saying, there's so many wonderful jewels in these verses. So I think
Okay, I'm getting the cane. I have to go. There's one person I never argue with.
Bhuta, Bhavana, Prabhu. Just one second. Can I say something? I don't want to wrap it up. Of course, you are the only one, but regarding this, one day was Bhakti Swami sitting there. It was like 4 or 5 days before he left, maybe 10 days before he left. And all the sannyasis were there. I mean, many sannyasis, many ISKCON sannyasis. Like, I don't know, 20 or so. I was in charge of recording. And he started the conversation. It was only the sannyasis and myself, because I was in charge of recording. And he said, if I ever knew, the subtleties of life in Krishna consciousness, I don't know if I ever will join Krishna consciousness. And all the sannyasis, they go like that. So just to, I just want to, and you are expert in going to subtleties, and I just, I want to thank you very much, because this was a wonderful seminar, and of course Maharaja also, that we know that he's also expert in going in this vichara or reflections, and because we have to go deeper and deeper and deeper into subtleties, you know, because even all these sannyasis, they were like that. So we all know, you know, what it means to go into walking this hard path of getting out of this material world. But anyway, I just want Maharaja to finish. Thank you.
One last thing. Siddhanta said, just to illustrate what you say or to emphasize, Bhakti Siddhanta says, the path of bhakti is strewn with thorns. It's strewn with thorns. The path of bhakti is strewn with thorns. So, if you go to Vrindavan, there are paths like that, but still, the sadhus, they walk that path. Because the goal is worth the pain.
The Bible also says that, Guru Maharaj. In the Bible also the same thing is said. The path of the righteous is strewn with thorns.
Yeah, that's also Bhakti Siddhanta, same thing. That's an exact quote.
So just close it. So we will stop.
So one thing is they could nullify the effects of thorn. It's called prashadam. That's right now. So you can forget about the thorns for a little while.
So thank you all for listening. Thank you to Maharaj, thank you Maharaj.
Praise Prabhu ki!
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Wow. And the thing with Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu is he's so transcendental that he doesn't feel tired after giving class all day. He's just so enlivened. And we're so fortunate that we get him practically every year at our disciples' retreats because he always just imbibes Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and so we get to have his presence at all of our retreats, and we're so blessed to have you here with us as well. Thank you for being here. You all just imbibe his presence so much, and we get to have his association whenever you're here. So thank you. Kanchanabja Prabhu, Lord Ram.
The road now.
What was one of your highlights of the class?
I think that we always have to be inspired, and I really appreciate that point, that we always have to be inspired. Sometimes in Krishna consciousness, when I was just reflecting that when we're not authentic, then we're not acting inspired because we may try to imitate someone else. But yeah, that's something that I took there. We can be inspired if we're being our true self, and also to cultivate a forgiving mentality.
Yeah. Thank you. So just a few announcements, sorry, just before your prasadam. Do you want to go first? Should I go first? Okay. So tonight we will have prasadam now, and then we're going to try to get back inside for kirtan at 7:15. Maybe? You're already laughing. Okay, 7:15. We'll have kirtan again until, it's on paper 9 o'clock, but we all know it'll go later. And then tomorrow morning, we will have an initiation ceremony at 7:45. So we have 3 wonderful devotees getting initiated. If you don't know who, you can do some gossip, for lack of a better word, to find out. Just a little reminder. It's the end of we made Maharaj laugh. In the morning, if it's all right, we're going to set up the yagya kund where the men typically do their japa. So if you don't mind leaving that area clear in the morning, we can set that up prior to the ceremony.
Yeah, and if we can just take prasadam straight away, because the devotees here would like to clean up in time. So if we can just take prasad straight away and not delay that too long, and then we can also get back for kirtan and be together tonight.
What time's the initiation?
The initiation.
7:45. So morning program from 4:30, and at 7:45 we'll have the class and the initiation. So please be up and ready to rock and roll with the initiation. Yeah, so the schedule is initiation at 7:45, so 9:15, then breakfast, and then back again for class straight after that.
And just the last thing, one of the points that came out of class today was having the practice of glorifying devotees. That was one of the examples you gave as a potential habit we would maybe like to adopt moving forward. And he mentioned that we should start doing those habits now. So if that is one of your habits, and even if it's not, please do take one of the cards on the table and write notes to the devotees that you connected with here, as they can take that home and feel encouraged in their seva as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Hari Om!